So the reading is from Mark 8, verses 27 to 38. His declaration about obedience. These men all his disciples to the villages of Caesarea Philippi, and on his way he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" And they answered him, "John the Baptist, and others Elijah, and still others one of the prophets." He asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter answered, "You are the Messiah." And he sternly ordered them not to tell anyone about him. Then he began to teach them that the Son of Man must undergo great suffering and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. He said all this quite openly, and Peter took the side and began to rebuke him. But turning and looking at his disciples, he rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things." He called the crowd and said to them, "If anyone wishes to come after me, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For those who save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it. For what will profit them to gain the whole world and forfeit their life? Indeed, what can they give in return for their life? For those who are ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of them the Son of Man will also be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels." This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. The study of the Gospel of Mark was the very first subject I took when I started my Bachelor of Theology. And so it has a very special place for me. It's a gospel that I believe I know particularly well. One of the first things that our lecturer asked us to do was to read the Gospel of Mark as if we were reading a story. Don't worry about the chapters or the verses, and don't stop until you've finished it, were our instructions. I suggest you give it a try. If you haven't already, because it's really worth reading. In fact, I'd almost do that to every single one of the Gospels, because you see the differences that we get from those Gospels. One of the things that has stayed with me is where the centre of this Gospel is. And that's from where our reading today is taken from. Mark chapter 8, verse 29, marks the centre of this story in so many ways. This is the point where Mark's Gospel changes. Here we have the question of the identity of Jesus and the answer that declares who Jesus is, the Messiah. After this declaration, Jesus begins to talk about his death, and he turns towards Jerusalem, the march towards Good Friday, and Easter Sunday has begun. We heard this morning, Jesus went on with his disciples to the villages of Caesarea Philippi, and on the way he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" And they answered him, "John the Baptist, and others, Elijah, and still others, one of the prophets." And he asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" Most of us come to know Jesus by what someone else says, models, or perhaps writes. It might be a parent, it might be a teacher, a work colleague, or even a friend who tells us those first words of everlasting life. Yet we cannot rely on the faith or the experience of others to provide for us a relationship with Christ. Ultimately, our faith comes down to the very individual question, who do you say that I am? As Jesus prepared his disciples for this ultimate question, he asked them a preparatory question, something to get them in the mood, start them thinking, and it was based on the experience of others. Who do people say that I am? And the answer Jesus received shows three things. One, that the disciples really had been listening to what the people were saying because they could answer him. Two, that the people had no clue who Jesus was and that the disciples themselves were rather confused. And three, that the disciples were only going to share the good stuff with Jesus. They seemed to have left out the bad stuff that was being said as well. Because some of that is many religious leaders had been calling Jesus Beelzebub or his servant. You don't hear that in this. It's not usual. People who had witnessed Jesus from distance were confused about his role. He had come to the attention of the people by casting out of demons, feeding the poor, healing the sick and crippled, and preaching with authority. He came preaching the good news. And yet, like any of us, people had stopped believing that really good news would ever happen in their lifetime. Just like now, there was so much going on around them that was not good. How or when was that ever going to change? So instead of daring to call him Messiah, and the Messiah means the promised and expected deliverer of the Jewish people, they thought that he might be a prophet. It's foretold in the writings of Moses in Deuteronomy. Or he might be the great Elijah returned to earth. Or because of his incredible preaching that Jesus must be John the Baptist, returned from the dead and restored to health. In fact, they could believe just about anything except that Jesus believed the Messiah. Many of us are like these people in so many respects. We believe in God. We might even believe in a loving God, but we can sometimes fall short of believing that that loving God would actually love us. The Messiah was indeed among these people. All the prophecies and signs pointed right to Jesus, and yet these people missed him in the same way that someone might neglect a dangerous curve ahead sign on a windy road and drive right up or off the embankment. So after this preparation, he's asking the disciples the ultimate question. And from that, he expects an ultimate answer. Jesus asked the disciples point blank for their personal response, their own personal reply. He wants a I say, not a some say. So Peter jumps in, as he is in the habit of doing, with the answer, you are the Messiah. Here is the great moment of revelation of this gospel. Peter has seen who Jesus is. He answers in a way that the rest of the disciples could not. Here we have a moment of clarity, a declaration of truth, a great statement made by Peter. But we all know, Peter also failed great many times. Time and again he shows confusion and lack of understanding about the message and the ministry of Jesus. I love Peter because he's very much like any of us, an ordinary person trying to be a disciple who happens to fall short many times. And I believe that Peter falls short so often because he is willing to stretch his reach beyond his grasp. He is willing to learn, to grow, to be challenged. He is willing to take risks in faith. That's what we see happening in our text today. As Jesus and his disciples are walking along the road to Caesarea Philippi, Peter is the only one who is willing to speak with Jesus about who he believes Jesus is.
Of course, we know that this strength,
Peter makes his declaration, doesn't quite go to plan.
Jesus orders
The disciples
disciples
not to tell anyone, not to share with people what Peter has just declared.
and instead of praising
Peter for his insight,
Mark
had Jesus begin to tell the disciples of his forthcoming death and resurrection and what they must face if they really follow him. I want to go back to that ultimate question that Jesus put to his disciples. The question calling for them to answer for themselves, but who do you say I am? It is the question that Peter got so right, but still didn't seem to grasp what it was that Jesus was on about. It's a question that we will all ask at one time or another. How will we respond? Who do we say Jesus is? Who do we believe personally Jesus is? I don't think Jesus wants second-hand testimony from us. No, he doesn't. He doesn't want quotes from books and the words of others, the beliefs of our parents, or the fact that we attend church or hang around people who act Christian. None of that makes a difference because Jesus is nothing less than our personal response to his question. Who do you say that I am? No question will be as important to us as this one. Each of us must weigh the question personally and decide for itself what we believe. Each of us must decide if it's humble pastor who lived for 33 and yet turned the world upside down is indeed Son of God. And what we believe will shape our lives, our actions, and who we are in the world around us. But who do you say that I am? The answer to this question and our living out that answer will draw others to Christ. It will draw others to the community here and will draw others to answer that question for themselves. This is what being the community of Christ is all about. This is the challenge for us personally, and it is the challenge for the church today. Who do you say, or who do you say that I am?